Discover the forgotten secret that's transforming tired soil. No chemicals, no fancy fertilizers, just pure kitchen wisdom. In this episode of the Evergreen Seniors, we reveal how pulverized rice can breathe new life into your garden beds, enrich your soil naturally, and make your plants thrive like never before. From a 90-year-old gardener's story to the simple science behind it, you'll see why the old ways still work best. Subscribe and rediscover nature's original fertilizer. The woman who never bought fertilizer. This is Margaret Shun, 87 years old. She's lived in the same little farmhouse on the edge of Lincoln, Nebraska, for most of her life. And while everything around her has changed, the town, the tools, even the weather, her garden has stayed the same, rich, fertile, and alive. Margaret grew up during the years of rationing, back when you learned to waste nothing, when your kitchen scraps were gold, and your compost pile was as important as your pantry. Her mother taught her something simple, something most of us have forgotten in the rush for convenience. Everything nature gives you has a second purpose. Slow pan over her tools, old spades, worn gloves, a cracked ceramic bowl filled with rice grains. For over 60 years, Margaret's garden has fed her family, 3 generations, without a single bag of store-bought fertilizer. No chemicals, no expensive soil mixes, just kitchen wisdom passed down like a family recipe. And at the center of it all, her secret weapon, pulverized rice. She calls it feeding the soil its memory. Her words, not mine. Because, according to Margaret, soil forgets. It forgets what it means to breathe, to hold moisture, to feed the living things inside it. And when it forgets, plants suffer. That was her problem one spring. A winter so brutal it left her garden bed hard as concrete. Her carrots bent instead of growing straight. Her beans shriveled before flowering. Even the earthworms, her lifelong companions, had vanished. She'd done everything right. Watered, composted, prayed. But the soil had gone silent. And that's when a memory surfaced. Her mother, standing in the kitchen, grinding up broken rice grains after dinner. Not for cooking, but for the garden. The rice feeds the earth, she used to say, and the earth remembers kindness. So, that spring she tried it. She took her leftover rice, the crumbs at the bottom of the jar, and ground them into a soft powder. Then, she worked it into the top layer of her soil, gently, like seasoning a stew. And then, she waited. 3 weeks later, her garden looked like a different world. The smell of life came back. The worms came home. And her tomatoes, the same variety she'd planted every year, tasted sweeter than ever. Margaret didn't know it then, but she'd stumbled on one of nature's oldest secrets. A way to restore soil life using something most people throw away. Fade out on Margaret smiling, holding a ripe tomato, sunlight catching her silver hair. And the best part? You don't need a farm, a budget, or even perfect soil to do it. Just a handful of rice. And a little patience. The science made simple, when old wisdom meets modern soil science. Now, Margaret didn't know the chemistry. She didn't need to. But science, after all these years, has finally caught up with her wisdom. What happens when you grind rice into powder and mix it into your soil isn't magic. It's microbiology in motion. Pulverized rice is packed with one thing that life in your soil craves: carbohydrates. Pure, simple energy. Food for the soil's microbes. When you add rice powder to the earth, you're not feeding your plants. You're feeding the tiny workers beneath them. Beneficial bacteria, the ones that make compost rich and soil fertile. Wake up like they've just had a cup of coffee. They feast on the rice starch, multiply quickly, and start doing what they do best: breaking down old organic matter. This process is called nutrient cycling. The faster it happens, the more food your plants get, not from fertilizer, but from nature itself. That's why, just weeks after Margaret added pulverized rice, her garden came back to life. 2. It improves soil structure. But microbes aren't the only ones who benefit. As rice decomposes, it changes the very texture of the soil. Those tiny rice particles create micro-air pockets, like little lungs in the ground. If you've ever battled clay soil that refuses to drain, or sandy soil that dries too fast, pulverized rice quietly balances both extremes. In clay, it loosens and opens the structure, letting air and water move freely. In sandy soil, it helps moisture stick around just long enough for roots to absorb it. The result? soil that crumbles easily in your hand and holds together just enough to nurture roots. 3. Attracts earthworms, nature's best gardeners. Margaret used to say, if you want to know if your garden's happy, count your worms. Earthworms adore decomposing carbohydrates, and pulverized rice is basically a 5-star buffet. As they move through your garden beds, they eat, digest, and release what gardeners call castings, nature's perfect fertilizer. One single earthworm can process its entire body weight in soil every single day. The more worms you have, the more your garden thrives. And guess what? When they show up, they stay, because you've created an ecosystem that feeds them back. 4. Natural pH balance. Here's another reason Margaret's trick works so universally. Rice has a neutral pH. That means it helps calm down acidic soils and gently raises the vitality of alkaline ones. No test kits, no guesswork. It simply encourages balance. Margaret didn't need charts or lab results. She just knew. Healthy soil smells sweet. It crumbles in your hand, and when you press it, it feels alive. Pulverized rice gave her all 3. Tip 1. How to prepare pulverized rice, turning kitchen scraps into garden gold. Now that we know why pulverized rice works, let's talk about how to make it. And the good news? You don't need fancy tools or expensive gadgets. Margaret used what she had, because in her kitchen, nothing ever went to waste. Option 1. The coffee grinder method. You've already got the perfect tool. Start with old, broken, or expired rice, the kind sitting forgotten at the back of the pantry. Don't waste the good stuff. Even the crumbs and cracked grains will do. Work in small batches. Pulse it for about 30 to 60 seconds per cup, until the texture feels powdery, like soft sand or flour. Pour it into a mason jar or airtight container, and you're done. That's your natural, chemical-free soil booster ready to go. Option 2. Mortar and pestle, traditional method. This was Margaret's favorite way, the slow, traditional method. A mortar and pestle. It takes more time, sure, but she always said, the grinding is meditation. The garden rewards patience. You don't even need to make it ultra-fine. A coarser texture still breaks down beautifully in the soil. What matters most is the intention, turning what would be waste into something the earth can use again. Option 3. The blender method for bigger batches. If you're working with larger garden beds, the blender method might be your best friend. Add your dry rice to a clean container, no water, no moisture. Then pulse in short bursts until it reaches a flour-like consistency. You'll see a fine white powder rise up, like a kitchen cloud of possibility. Once it's done, let it cool before sealing it up. Pulverized rice keeps indefinitely when stored in a dry place. A mason jar, an old tin, even a recycled spice jar works. How much to make? For an average 10 by 10 foot garden bed, start with about 2 to 3 cups of pulverized rice. That's usually enough to rejuvenate your soil. You can always make more later. It's simple, sustainable, and best of all, it costs almost nothing. Margaret's pro tip. Margaret never threw rice away. Not the grains that fell on the floor. Not the ones that got too old. Not even the bits left over after cooking. She'd dry them out and save them. Because, as she always said, nothing wasted. Everything returns to the earth. What do you have in your kitchen right now that you could grind up for your garden? Maybe coffee grounds? Old rice? Even stale bread? Tell us in the comments, because every bit of waste can become life again. Tip 2. When and where to apply feeding the soil like an old friend. Margaret used to say, the soil is alive. Feed it like you'd feed a friend, gently. And when it's hungry. She never dumped it all in one spot. She scattered it like feeding chickens, light, even, with intention. And that simple wisdom made all the difference. Best times to use pulverized rice. 1. Spring application, waking up the garden. Margaret's favorite time to use pulverized rice was spring, about 2 to 3 weeks before planting. She called it waking up the garden. That's when soil microbes are still groggy from winter, and just a little food gets them stirring. The rice powder gives them energy, helping the soil warm faster and come alive again. You're not just preparing for seeds. You're setting the table for every living thing under the surface. 2. Fall application, feeding the earth for winter. After the harvest, just before the frost, Margaret always did one last act of kindness. She sprinkled rice powder over her garden beds and gently mixed it into the soil. It wasn't for that year's crops. It was for the next. She called it tucking the soil in for the winter. As the rice breaks down through the cold months, it feeds dormant microbes and keeps the underground world alive. Come spring, the soil wakes up rich, soft, and ready to grow again. 3. Mid-season boost for tired or struggling plants. If you notice your plants struggling mid-season, maybe the soil's compacted, or heavy rains have washed nutrients away, a light sprinkling of pulverized rice can bring things back to balance. It's like giving your garden a gentle meal halfway through the day. The microbes get a new energy source, and within a week or two, you'll see the difference: brighter leaves, stronger stems, and sweeter fruits. Where to apply pulverized rice? Vegetable gardens. Work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of soil, especially around heavy feeders like tomatoes, peppers, and beans. Root vegetables love it too. Carrots and beets grow straighter, cleaner, and tastier when the soil's loose and alive. Flower beds. Roses adore pulverized rice. It strengthens their roots and deepens their color. Perennials respond beautifully too: daisies, lilies, even lavender. And for bulbs, it improves drainage and helps prevent rot during wet spells. Container gardens. If you garden in containers, this trick works wonders. Just mix a handful into your potting soil before planting. It prevents compaction, keeps the soil fluffy, and gives your potted plants a longer, healthier life. Lawn trouble spots. Got bare or compacted patches in your lawn? Sprinkle a thin layer, rake it lightly, and water. It helps the soil breathe and encourages grass to take root again, naturally, without chemicals. Tip 3. The exact application method. The gentle way Margaret fed her soil. Margaret never rushed her soil. She treated it like an old friend who needed care, not control. And when it came time to use pulverized rice, she had a method, simple, steady, and proven by decades of abundance. Step 1. Prepare the bed. Start by clearing away weeds and surface debris. Then loosen the top 6 inches of soil with a garden fork or tiller. Don't pulverize it. You're not trying to make powder. Just open it up so air and life can move freely again. Step 2. Calculate the amount. For every 10 square feet of garden bed, use 1 to 2 cups of pulverized rice. Less is more, especially for your first application. You can always add more later once your soil adjusts. Step 3. Distribution, the gentle scatter. Through. She never dumped or poured, she dusted, like spreading powdered sugar on a warm cake. Even, light, and full of care. She used an old flour sifter for it, saying, "The soil eats better when it's fed slowly." Step 4. Work it in. Next, use a rake or your hands to work the rice powder into the top 3 to 4 inches of soil. No need to bury it deep. Most of the life that eats and transforms it lives right near the surface. Cut 2. Microbes and worms animated beneath the surface, showing the beginning of decomposition. Step 5. Water lightly. Give it a light watering, just enough to dampen the surface and wake up the microbes. You're not trying to wash it away. Just signal to the living world beneath that dinner is served. Step 6. Wait and watch. Now, the hardest part, patience. Give it 2 to 3 weeks before planting. You'll notice the changes long before your plants do. The soil will feel softer, earthworms will return, and soon, your garden will respond, stronger, greener, more alive than before. Margaret's secret touch. She always added one final touch, a handful of finished compost over the top. She called it tucking the garden in with a blanket. Then she'd smile and say, "The rice wakes them up. The compost keeps them fed." What not to do? A few things to avoid if you want Margaret's magic to work its best. Don't use cooked rice. It attracts pests. Don't apply right before planting. Wait 2 weeks to let the microbes balance out. Don't overdo it. More isn't better. And don't expect miracles overnight. Nature rewards patience, not impatience. Be honest. Are you the patient type, or do you want to see results tomorrow? Drop it in the comments. Either way, your garden will teach you that slow miracles are the ones that last. Tip 4. What to expect and timeline. Margaret always said, patience is a gardener's best fertilizer. When she first scattered her pulverized rice across the beds, nothing looked different. The ground still looked dull, compact, tired. But she knew better. She knew life was waking up beneath the surface. Week 1 to 2, the awakening. Something subtle begins. The soil starts to feel softer, more alive under your fingers. You might notice faint white threads forming. Don't panic. That's good fungi, nature's invisible gardeners, weaving life back into the dirt. The smell changes, too, from dry dust to the deep, earthy scent of a forest floor. Margaret would smile and say, "If it smells like a forest after rain, you're doing it right." Week 3 to 4, the activity begins. Earthworms return. First one, then dozens. The soil crumbles more easily. Water begins to sink in rather than pool on top. The color deepens, brown turning to rich, dark chocolate. Your plants will notice before you do. Leaves stand a little taller. Roots begin to stretch out again. Week 6 to 8, the transformation. This is when magic turns visible. Your tomatoes grow thicker stems. Lettuce tastes sweeter and tenderer. Peppers flower earlier and produce longer. Flowers bloom in waves, brighter, fuller, more fragrant. Margaret kept notes every year. In her first season using pulverized rice. Tomatoes, 40% more yield. Lettuce, noticeably sweeter and crispier. Peppers, ripened 2 weeks earlier. Flowers, bloomed almost till frost. She'd shake her head and laugh. And I didn't spend a dime. Years 2 to 3, the long-term payoff. The soil becomes self-sustaining. You'll find yourself doing less work each season, fewer weeds. Better drainage, healthier plants. Earthworms stay year-round. You can scale back to 1 application a year. Margaret's test was simple. Grab a handful of soil and squeeze. If it holds shape but crumbles when poked, perfect. If it stays a hard ball, add more rice. If it falls apart completely, add compost too. Her neighbor Tom, a retired schoolteacher, spent hundreds each year on chemical fertilizers. His garden looked fine, until Margaret's. Her tomatoes won the county fair 3 years straight. Tom finally asked her secret. She just handed him a jar of powdered rice and said, "Here's your miracle, Tom, just cheaper and kinder." Margaret never gardened for perfection. She gardened for connection between the soil, the seed, and the soul that tended them. Because when the earth feels alive beneath your hands, so do you. What would you grow first in your revived soil? Vegetables, flowers, or herbs? Tell us your dream garden in the comments. Tip 5. Combining with other natural amendments. Margaret never believed in single solutions. The garden, she'd say, is like a good stew. It takes more than one ingredient to make it rich. Her secret wasn't just pulverized rice. It was the art of combination, simple, natural things working together in perfect balance. She layered wisdom the way she layered quilts, one thoughtful piece at a time. Margaret's ultimate soil recipe. Pulverized rice, the energizer. 1 to 2 cups per 10 square foot. Wakes up sleeping microbes. Starts the soil's healing conversation. Finished compost, the foundation. 2 to 3 inches layered gently on top. Feeds long-term, builds resilience in the root zone. Crushed eggshells, the calcium source. A handful scattered around. Prevents blossom end rot. Adds slow-release minerals. Used coffee grounds, the acidifier. Thin layer only, perfect for tomatoes. Roses, blueberries. Adds nitrogen and mild acidity. Earthworms adore it. Dried leaves, the carbon blanket. Shredded and worked in lightly. Balances nitrogen, keeps soil soft, airy, and sponge-like. The application order, Margaret's method. Margaret treated soil layering like tucking in a child at night. Gentle, patient, deliberate. 1. Pulverized rice first. Worked into top few inches. It's the wake-up call, she'd say. 2. Compost second. Spread evenly across the surface. 3. Eggshells and coffee grounds third, sprinkled like seasoning. 4. Leaves last, a light, soft mulch. Then she'd water, not soak, just enough to whisper. It's time to grow. Seasonal variations, her rhythms of the year. Spring recipe, heavy on rice, kickstart growth. Moderate compost, skip coffee grounds, too much nitrogen too fast. Fall recipe, moderate rice, microbial food for winter. Heavy compost, the blanket, she called it. As many dried leaves as you can gather. Summer boost, just a light dusting of rice. Use compost tea instead of solid compost. Coffee grounds only around tomatoes and peppers, Margaret's warning. Never add everything at once the first year. You're healing the soil, not force-feeding it. Gentle hands, patient heart. She believed nature works best when we stop rushing it. Every sprinkle, every handful had purpose. The cost comparison. Margaret's method, $5, 10 per season, mostly free kitchen scraps. Store-bought fertilizers, $50, 150. Chemical treatments, $100, 300. Her results? Sweeter tomatoes, softer soil, happier earthworms, and peace of mind that nothing harmful ever touched her garden. Margaret's greatest joy wasn't the yield. It was the relationship with her soil. Every kitchen scrap was a story, every handful of rice. A memory of a time when people worked with the earth, not against it. She used to smile and say, "The miracle isn't what you grow, it's how the soil learns to trust you again." What kitchen scraps do you already save for your garden? Share your secret ingredients in the comments. Your wisdom might help someone's garden come alive again. Common mistakes to avoid. Margaret always said, "The garden is a patient teacher, but only if you're a humble student." She didn't get it perfect the first time. In fact, her greatest lessons came from the mistakes she made. The same ones most gardeners make when they try something new. Let's save you that frustration. Here are the 6 most common mistakes when using pulverized rice, and how Margaret learned to avoid them. Mistake number 1, using too much. More isn't better, not in gardening, not in life. Adding too much pulverized rice can actually tie up nitrogen temporarily. As microbes feast and multiply, your plants might yellow before the balance returns. Start small, observe, and adjust. Margaret used to whisper. A whisper is louder than a shout when the soil is listening. Mistake number 2, applying cooked rice. Cooked rice might seem harmless, but it's an open invitation for pests. Rats, raccoons, even ants will come calling. Worse, it rots instead of breaking down naturally, creating odor and mess. Always use raw, dry rice, ground fine or coarse. That's what wakes up the soil, not the scavengers. Mistake number 3, expecting instant results. We live in a quick-fix world, but soil doesn't rush. This isn't miracle grow, it's a slow transformation from the roots up. It takes weeks to see visible change, but the results last for years. Margaret used to laugh and say, "If you want instant results, grow in patience, not tomatoes." Mistake number 4, skipping the wait time. Patience again. You must wait 2 to 3 weeks before planting. During that time, microbes wake up, digest the rice, and rebalance the soil. Plant too early, and young seedlings may struggle. It's simply too active beneath the surface. Patience always pays. Mistake number 5, forgetting to water it in. Dry rice just sits there. It needs moisture, not a flood, to activate. A light watering turns powder into microbial fuel. Think damp sponge, not mud pit. Margaret's method was gentle, a soft sprinkle in the evening, letting nature do the rest. Mistake number 6, applying only once and quitting. This is the most common and the saddest mistake. One application begins the process, but true transformation takes seasons. First year, awakening. Second year, deepening. Third year, flourishing. Soil healing, Margaret said, is a relationship, not a transaction. She knew it firsthand. Her first attempt failed. Too much rice, too soon, and her beans struggled. But she didn't quit. She adjusted. She learned. By the second year, her soil was alive again. By the third, she was teaching her neighbors, and her tomatoes were winning county fairs. Mistakes aren't setbacks, they tell you where nature's balance is trying to return. Every gardener who ever grew something beautiful also failed first. The secret? Don't give up, grow through it. Why this matters? But this isn't really about rice, is it? It's about something much deeper. Something the soil reminds us of every time we touch it. Margaret didn't start gardening because she wanted perfect vegetables. She started at age 47, the spring after her husband died. The garden gave her purpose. It gave her peace. It gave her a reason to see tomorrow. One day, her granddaughter asked, "Grandma, why don't you ever buy fertilizer like everyone else?" Margaret smiled, that quiet, knowing smile, and said something that stopped her cold. "Because I need to remember that broken things can still feed life. That what looks used up still has purpose. That patience turns poverty into abundance." She wasn't just healing soil. She was healing herself. In a world that tells us to buy newer, shinier, faster, pulverized rice whispers something different. You already have what you need. Waste nothing. Wait for what matters. Tend the unseen. Trust the process. This old woman, in her quiet backyard, lived a truth our generation is forgetting. You don't fix tired soil with money. You fix it with attention. What Margaret was really teaching wasn't a recipe, it was a rhythm. Her method represented more than gardening tips. Resourcefulness, using what we have. Patience, trusting nature's timeline. Wisdom, learning from those who came before us. Sustainability, breaking free from the chemical cycle. Connection, hands in soil, hearts grounded in purpose. We remember when everyone grew something. When neighbors traded tomatoes for zucchini. When you knew where your food came from, because you put it there yourself. Pulverized rice isn't modern. It isn't trendy. It won't go viral on any algorithm. But it works, and it reconnects us to something real. She still gardens every day the weather allows. Her soil is so alive now, it nearly tends itself. And every spring, she grinds a fresh batch of rice, works it gently into the earth, and whispers the same simple prayer. Thank you for one more season. Because that's what this is really about: gratitude, renewal, and the quiet miracle of life returning through what was once broken. Who taught you to garden? Drop their name in the comments. Let's honor them together. Because the best fertilizer isn't in a bag. It's the stories and hands that came before us. If Margaret's story stirred something in you, if you're tired of fertilizers that burn both your wallet and your soil, if you're ready to grow food the way it was meant to be grown, simple, natural, and full of life, then do something small, but powerful. Give this video a thumbs up, not for the algorithm, for the message, because somewhere out there, another gardener needs to be reminded that old wisdom still works. Share this video with someone who still remembers when tomatoes actually tasted like tomatoes, when soil smelled alive, when gardening was more than a hobby. It was a way of life. Because this channel, the Evergreen Seniors, isn't just about growing plants. It's about growing connection between generations, between memories, between the earth and our hearts. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're just getting started. Next week, we're digging into another forgotten secret, one your grandparents probably knew by heart, something that'll change how you think about soil, and maybe even how you think about life. Until then, get your hands dirty. Save those scraps. Listen to your soil. It's speaking if you slow down long enough to hear it. And remember, nothing old is ever truly finished. Sometimes, it just needs the right soil to bloom again. This is the Evergreen Seniors, where old wisdom grows new life. Who taught you your first gardening secret? Share their name in the comments. Let's make sure their wisdom lives on.